Hello and welcome to Betting Clever. This is episode 69 of the SBC podcast. And once again, I am joined by my partner in crime at the Smart Betting Club, Josh Holloway, to discuss all the latest goings on that should interest you if involved in betting for profit. So Josh, we have just recorded a fascinating interview with Ronan from Matchbook that people will be able to listen to in the second part of this podcast on how Matchbook have caught up and in some cases overtaken Betfair when it comes to market volume on some key markets. It certainly seems as though finally Betfair no longer has a monopoly on the exchange world.
Yes, it does. I was really impressed by Ronan's answers, very honest. It's given us lots of clarity about how their markets work, how they're different from Betfair, the areas they're trying to catch up, areas where they've overtaken them. So yeah, really fascinating stuff. Obviously, we've got our article that accompanies it with all the data and the hard facts. Really, really good stuff. So yeah, it was good to chat to him.
Yeah, it was. And there is a special offer that will slide in around this podcast on the article, which is 0% commission for 150 days. And that'll be, accompanying this podcast. You'll be able to go and check out Matchbook and pay 0% commission. But this is the first podcast we've done together this year in 2024. What's the scenario with your portfolio and your betting? Is it more of the same, slight adjustments or wholesale change?
Slight adjustments as ever. Last year, I did quite a big alteration in the way I bet. So I was basically aiming for a massive increase in volume, kind of preempting the fact that my ROI was going to drop, no bookmakers, etc. Some things worked, some didn't. So at the stage now where I'm really happy with my process for golf. We'll get onto that in a little bit. 2024 has been a bit brutal, but same for horse racing. Last year I was involved in lots of little projects and things. We've got some shared things going on, haven't we, that I think will grow over time. Small adjustments. I did have, it's called a surgery call. It's not a doctor. I spoke to Tom Brownlee from Bookie Bashing yesterday just to get a handle on some of the things I can do with football, really working using their models from first principles. So that's something I'll look to take up that I've never really done before, quite advanced stuff. So that'll probably be the main change, but everything else just ticking along. How about yourself, Pete?
Yeah, well, I'm mindful of not taking too much on because it's very easy in what we do is to take, I'll start betting on that and I'll start betting on that. And sometimes you become overwhelmed, there's too much, and you spread yourself too thin. So that's a key thing that I'm not going to do. And I learned my lesson on that a few years back. But yeah, more of the same. I think it's looking at more scalable markets. So, I'm betting, we'll talk about brokers, betting into more Asian or exchanges, ways and means that you can continue to build that up. Because very often when you're betting into exchanges or to sharp markets, you're betting at a lower ROI. And therefore, that volume really matters and stake size really matters. And obviously, you need the bankroll. So building that up over time is important. And if you can have a diversified portfolio where you're not just focused on golf, for example, you're betting on tennis, golf, football, basketball. We're talking about things that you can bet with sharp bookmakers or even on exchanges if you're doing stuff like horse racing. I think that's where we're at in terms of our own journey. But when we do the 5 stages, and we've done the 5 stages of betting, like if you're at stage 1, you're going to be playing with bookmakers. We're just at that latter stage, aren't we? So let's get stuck into the betting topics. And we've got a really hot topic this week.
Yeah.
We were going to talk about social media tipsters, weren't we? We'd already made notes. We had some points that we were going to talk about. And then, you've already mentioned him, friend of the show, Tom Brownlee, did a podcast. It's called The Bashcast. It was out in the middle of January. And he talks about a guy I can't believe I'd never heard of by the name of Andy Robson, because he's got nearly 700,000 followers. And we really need to talk about Andy, don't we, Josh? There's quite a few things here.
Yeah, we say 700,000. I'm not sure if all of them are actual people. It's hard to gauge, isn't it, with some of these social media things?
Yes.
So Tom covered quite a lot in his Bashcast around the murky world of affiliates, I suppose. There's affiliates out there that provide really good free services, and that's kind of the price you pay, is that they have those links on the page. But I think this is probably a little bit different, isn't it, Pete?
It is. So Andy puts himself out as an ordinary guy, but the reality is quite different. To explain what he does, if you follow his Twitter account, you'll find regularly posted what he calls his betting cheat sheets, which is basically all the stats on a game, like number of fouls, possession, shots on target, all the key metrics. And then he puts up bets that he thinks are good. So to give you some examples, recently he's put up bet builders. So it'd be a treble. So it'd be one player to commit 2+ fouls, a second player to have 1 or more shots on target, and a third player to be shown a yellow card. You click that link in the tweet and it'll preload that bet into Paddy Power using an affiliate link. And he also puts up boosts. And there was a recent one on Kulusevski, the Tottenham Hotspur player, to foul and be fouled. And that was apparently boosted from 1.9 to 2.1. And again, you click that link, it loads up the Paddy Power bet on the Paddy Power website. And the idea being it saves you time. And this is Andy Robson, who puts himself out as just a regular guy. And you'll see tweets that say, I've just finished eating, so I thought I'd knock this up. Hopefully it gets you a winner. But the reality is that it's not, there might be an Andy Robson, there might be Andrew Robson or Andy Robson or a Robson behind it, but it's not just him, is it? It's a big team and a big business behind it. Josh, tell us more about what we've uncovered.
After listening to Tom's stuff, I had a look myself. I looked at a few of the boosts, so-called boosts. So they'll say, like you say, from 1.9 to 2.1. First thing I did was go across to some of the rival bookmakers and found either the same bet or built them in a bet builder. First thing I found was that boosted from is an absolute pile of nonsense.
Yep.
What you generally found was that the competitive market price with other bookmakers was higher than what they said it was. And then, as Tom outlined, you can go onto the exchange for stuff like shots on target and everything else. You can either just do some quick calculations by multiplying them together, or if they're single bets, you can have a look at those. So we're talking about Paddy Power here. It's obviously Flutter. We've got the Betfair exchange. You can go across to the Betfair exchange and back it at higher prices than their boost.
It's the same company. Paddy Power, Betfair, same company.
Yeah. So they're basically filtering people en masse on social media, getting people who are kind of drawn in by the smart graphics and everything on those sheets. Looks very official, looks very smart, to negative EV bets. And not just negative EV, but bets where you can get a better price elsewhere. We're in this climate at the moment where everyone's talking about responsible gambling and everything else.
Yep.
I would go back and point to what the most egregious behaviour from the bookmakers in the last 10 years. A lot of people will link it back to those VIP schemes, dragging people in and giving them poor value. It looks like they're trying to replace that revenue stream with a mass product, which is very similar, and it's not good. Yeah, lots of questions to answer, I think.
Yes, so you're quite right. That's hitting the nail on the head. It's responsible gambling. And I think it was a few years ago, we were reading some articles from 2018, I think, about social media tipsters putting up losing bets because they profit from a lost revenue scheme. So that is, if it talks about tipsters who would make, say, 30% of the profit, which the bookmaker's profit is your losses. So, you lose £100, the affiliate makes £30. So within their interests to put forward losing bets. And so there was an outcry about this, and therefore I think some firms closed their affiliate program. Skybet, who are part of Flutter, Betfair, Paddy Power, Skybet, closed their affiliate program, and there was some pushback about it from affiliates, understandably. Like, I have referred all these customers to you, you just can't close it down. And especially when it seems that Skybet subsequently announced, well, they still have an affiliate, but they obviously program, but it's very much like an individual one, right? They're very selective as to their affiliates that they use. They have to meet certain metrics. What it looks like is that they're very selective, so they don't have to provide oversight into how these affiliates are being remunerated. Like, are they getting paid per account that is opened? Do they have a profit share? There is no transparency on this. And when it comes to Andy, and Andy is Andy Robson, he's just one website of a similar ilk. We found another one called Badman Tipster from the same company, Fanwave Digital.
Same company.
Yeah, social media company, and they have lots of people working for them, and they run lots of viral Twitter, and no doubt they're on all the other social media platforms. But when it comes to the betting side of it, they seem to have quite a few where they're following a similar ethos. They're putting up negative value bets, and if you put them in trebles, it compounds the negative value, so they're loss-making. And what is the connection? Like, how are these companies connected? Who's selecting these bets that are being put forward? Why are Paddy Power happy for these people? Supposedly, Andy is trying to help people. Why are they happy for them to place bets with them through the affiliate? Well, they would only be happy if they're loss-making. They're never going to come to... We don't use affiliate links, but can you imagine the conversation? Can you send some smart betting club members to Paddy Power? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're going to make money off you.
Yeah, well, Tom was doing the calculations on his podcast, wasn't it? Imagine if they went to Bookie Bastion and said, can you send us over 600,000 people to bet on something at even 6-4 that should be even money? It's not going to happen, is it?
No.
Yeah, and that relationship really needs to be transparent, I suppose. I think I mentioned at the start, there are some services, think of, say, the Sporting Life or Odds Checker. Ultimately, they're advertising and affiliate companies, but you get something in return. There's Punting Pointers, there's Ben Linfoot, Matt Brocklebank, there's Ben Coley. They all work for Sporting Life. Now, I would never accuse them of not putting forward what they think to be value bets. But what I think happens with them is all those affiliate links kick in, and the bookmakers ultimately, they might let you have a £5 each way on a 50-1 golfer. Their plan there is for you to then go and lose it on something else, or to go and play on casino. This is something very different. This is an affiliate purposefully pushing lots and lots of people to one bookmaker, not doing any kind of price comparison, no competition, and really pushing them towards negative EV bets. It's just something very different. The more you look at it, the dodgier it looks. Look at their Twitter profiles. Everything's winning, booms, pictures of winning bet slips.
Yeah.
No record. It's just the red flags that we see with bad tipsters over and over and over, isn't it?
On a mass scale. My question is, people might say, actually someone asked Andy, and he tweeted recently, I'm open about my affiliation. If you use my referral link, I'll get a few quid.
Yeah.
Now, come on, Andy. We know it's not just you eating your dinner and putting this out. We know there's a whole team of people, a big company that's behind all this. You do it for several others. A few quid. Now, even if only 0.5% of those 700,000 are actually doing it, that's a significant number of people. And obviously, depending upon what their stake might actually be, there's lots of money there. And it's more than just a guy sharing his bets and people. I think this is there's a lot of money going behind this. And I think there's lots of questions to be asked about the relationship and how this works in the current model of responsible gambling. Because, like I say, there's no transparency. There's no record kept. There's no, this is what I made ROI in January and these are all the bets. It's all very much like, boom, this one. Here's a winning bet slip I'm going to retweet. And I think there's a lot of questions for this particular outfit, and perhaps there are more. But I'd like to thank Tom for raising it.
There's lots of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen Homeland, Pete?
I have.
Do you remember, I think it's quite late on, it's when they've got that bunker underneath the ground and they're sending all the social media stuff. They're like manipulating the election. I reckon it's more like that. I mean, if they want to see a bloke in his bedroom trying to find EV, that's me.
Yeah.
That's not some multimedia company with 700,000 followers. It's all a crock of shit, isn't it? It's just absolute nonsense.
Yeah, it is. And I think there's questions to be asked. So hopefully off the back of this, people will start asking the questions of these companies and the relationships they have. Because I know Joseph Bugdal, when I was researching this, he complained as he was a Sky Bet affiliate. They closed his account down. Now, Joseph was making money quite openly from affiliation, but then he wasn't sending people boosts. He had adverts on his football data website, which is a really useful resource, which encourages education and information and provided data about, if people clicked the Sky Bet account, he made a bit of cash. He was open about that.
Yeah.
He's the exact type of affiliate you should have because he's not promoting anything irresponsible. But yeah, on the flip side, you've got these issues where there's no transparency, and I think a lot of questions to answer. And a segue on to a different level, one of the things we were going to talk about is like social media tipsters, and this is an example. And the one person I got tagged in is the racing blogger, because he's getting involved in it.
Yeah.
So what he's got, join my private tipping group now for only £6 a month, get all my racing tips on that one. Now, again, I was tagged in it. Someone asked me, are you going to be tracking the performance of this? So I asked the question, nothing came back. Now, you might question, Josh, like, it's only £6, but that's the subscription for Bloggers Tips. How about how much money you're going to lose on his bets? A fair bit more.
Well, you'll have to have £100 on your first tip to make your £6 back, put it that way, based on what I've seen of him. And then you'll get some videos of him shouting, hit it, or crying into his beer when he gets beaten into second. But I wonder what's happening with William Hill, because I remember seeing that very dramatic video. It was like him looking up at the camera. The news has arrived, and then that seems to have gone quiet. I've read on Twitter that he's gone already.
Well, yeah, him and Tim Sherwood, the dream team.
Yeah, well, I mean, oh God, imagine that. What did he wear? A gilet, wasn't it? That stupid little coat.
Gilet, that's he's famous for.
With no arms, yeah.
It's not Gareth Southgate's waistcoat, is it? But,
no.
I mean, we're picking on Blogger there, but obviously he's a very high-profile guy.
Yeah.
Does he need the £6 from us? Again, he might be making a lot of £6, and then there's no transparency, and that's the big issue, and that's not just with him and Andy. They're just the high-profile ones, and there's several. You've got to be careful about this. You mentioned Ben Coley before. For the rights and wrongs of people, and the fact he puts up his bets quite early, you understand why, and he does keep a diligent record, and he's fair.
He's fair, yeah.
And so he needs credit for that. And some of the others, especially Sport and Life, they're great.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to criticise that. Let's be honest, let's try and think of it from our point of view. We bet quite extensively. We bet in relatively large amounts. If we're honest, Pete, he's probably not for us, is he? As good a judge as he is, because we can't get on a Monday night. Yeah. We can't get on a Tuesday morning. So we'd never criticise anybody for that, for what he does there. well, we would, but we wouldn't like go all in on them and call them dishonest or anything like that. We'd just say,
No.
maybe this isn't as practical as it could be. This is something different. This is people losing betting slips. This is people not having transparent records. This is people applying bog to their bets and then not reducing off rule force. This is just everything wrong with what goes on in the tipping industry. And on social media with all this nonsense with selfie sticks, it sends the wrong message again. It pulls people in and sells them a dream that they're not going to be able to achieve.
That's right.
It's not responsible and it's not open and fair. It's just, I don't like it. I think I'm into racing more than you are, Pete, but there's 2 or 3 of them on there. Just morons. Like, I saw one the other day and he was going on about how he put up an anti-post tip for Cheltenham and it was a non-runner. And he asked his followers if he gets his money back. So this guy is advising. He's got 20,000 followers and he's asking that question. You click on any of his bets if they win and there's a rule 4 and his followers are underneath saying, why haven't I got paid 30 quid off a £10 bet on a 2-1? Because they've never heard of a rule 4 before. It's just dragging in these people who, in my eyes, are either vulnerable or naive. And there is responsibility on people who are following to know themselves, but there's also all this bravado on social media. It's just not good.
Especially when they're not transparent about the fact that it's a big operation behind it, not just some guy. And I feel like that's important. And you mentioned there about VIP taking a lot of money off a small number of people. I think what these are doing are taking small sums off a lot of people, which is the way that they're able to obtain it, right? To work within the margins of affordability. So maybe you're making the same sum, but just over a large group of people. Who knows? But certainly that seems to be what the narrative is and how they're working and why they're doing it. Like,
it makes sense. In the current climate, you can see why they're doing it. It doesn't make it any more palatable, though, does it, I guess?
No, it doesn't. And I'd like to see some transparency and someone look into this a little bit more with bigger connections than us and see what's actually going on. But let's talk about something positive from a betting perspective. That's the dangers of social media stuff, so be very careful. But then on the positive side, we're doing something different with a service called Account Agent, aren't we? Which is about extending the life of your soft bookmaker account. So from the concept, right? So if you bet into an account and you take, you take warm early price racing, or you're taking lots of each way racing value that because if you're looking at the win and place market, you do that with some firms, you're going to get closed down quite quickly. However, if you bet in other ways, in a shrewd way, your account is going to last substantially longer. And if you distill it down into actual sums of money, let's say for each account, you can make £1,000 if you do sharp stuff and warm bets and obvious value edges. But then if you use some of the shrewd tactics we'll talk about an account agent, you can make £4,000. That's another £3,000 per account. And if you open up, however many accounts, 20 times 3,000 or whatever it might be, and obviously it's very much a back of an envelope, and it's always going to be a little bit different per firm. But the theory is that you're going to make a lot more by doing some of these tactics. Do you want to outline, as I witter on, like what we're doing with account agent and how it works?
Yeah, so run by Chris, who was involved in a very, very successful racing product that we had working with us last year. It's a 3-pronged approach. Basically, what you're trying to do is fool the AI front end of a bookmaker's website or account, and also leave a trail that even when a trader looks at it, they're going to think, it's just it's some mug who doesn't really know what they're doing. So the 3 prongs, amateur bets. So they're basically neutral EV or small negative EV losing bets that will be bet into high liquidity big markets. So it might be Premier League football, it might be La Liga, it might be NBA, something like that. Then you've got hedge bets, which is where you will back on the long side with a bookmaker, let's say 8-1, and then you'll lay that back off with an exchange, or we advise with a sharp bookmaker, or back the other side of that for a small loss. And then the third part, which the service doesn't actually give direct advice for, but in the report that we've had written, just give you some outlines, is to bet very small stakes accumulators with 12, 15 selections, just to make you look like that regular Joe who likes to aim for a big win on a Saturday in the football or whatever else. So they're the 3 prongs. Pete, what do you think? Do you think it's something that could really help people prolong their accounts?
Well, it definitely is. And my experience has been that if you take a more tailored approach and think about, especially early on, that probation period, I know some people dispute that, but I've seen enough evidence to know that it definitely does go on. And you never know exactly how each firm varies. They all have internal policies and approaches that obviously they're never going to publicize. and it will change from time to time. But the theory is great and it's solid. And I do think that this is the right type of thing. I've seen people rush in and place. I had a friend who opened a Bet365 and he started doing some really warm stuff. And he said, I've lost my account after 2 days. And I said, what have you done?
Yeah.
And he told me, I said, you're broken it in. Like, this is part of the issue, that I'm not aware of that. And obviously lost his account. He was very full of regret for that. So the idea of this, though, is because of AI being an important part of so many bookmakers, the accumulator bets. You put in like £1 on, £2 on, and you basically put in 15 teams in to win a eye-watering sum of money. And the idea is that flags the AI to go, oh, what's this big bet that we could, lose money on? And someone then from the risk management team goes to look at your account. And then what do they see? They see your amateur bets. You're betting into liquid markets. You're not taking top price. Think, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They're doing these ACCAs. They're doing these amateur bets. And if you're doing the hedge bets, you're betting on underdogs. You're betting, like, say, 5-1 on a pretty big market, and then you're laying it off for a small loss. So the idea being you're kind of moving your money from the soft bookmaker to your brokerage or your sharp bookmaker. And even if the underdog bet at 5-1 does win with bookmaker, they're not going to look at that and think, oh, he's particularly shrewd, because these aren't going to be CLV. They're not going to be particularly strong edges. They're not going to analyze it in that perspective. And the idea is you do that, especially early on, you do all of those types of bets, the first 100 bets that you place, or a mixture of those, for example.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
And it should get you through. And then continuously, you want to keep putting them through, especially after big wins, because that's where maybe you're going to be appearing on some trader's sheet to look at all the accounts that have won $2,000 this week or whatever it might be. And then maybe you want to try and see if you can hide your tracks. And there's no guarantee. But like I say, if you can make, if you can double the amount you can win in every account, it's a significant amount of money that you can increase before you get closed down.
What you said to your friend now, you said, what have you done? Like, what have you done?
Yeah, what have you done?
I wish you'd been there when I first got my account. So I was like a bull in a china shop. It's like 8-1. It's 6-1 everywhere else. I'll pile in on that. And it's just daft. Like you say, it's better to, what's the saying about sheep? Shear them slowly or whatever. You don't want to skin them. Like, it's way better to take your time, be nice and steady, and have an ROI of like 5% that lasts a year rather than an ROI of 10% that lasts 2 days.
Yeah.
It's a way more sustainable way of doing things. It takes a bit of patience, but I wish I'd done it, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it's definitely something I do and have done and do recommend. So there's a Telegram group where we put in through the amateur bets and the hedge bets, and there's also a guide that explains how it all works and what type of accumulator bet. So that's all for SBC members now.
Yeah, it's free as well, isn't it, Pete?
Yeah, if you have to be a paid SBC member, it's obviously free to get all that access. And so we'll talk about that. We'll move on to our golf stuff, which we've been doing throughout January. And, what we...
Do we have to? Do we have to?
It's been, when we did the golf podcast, we say its variance is tough, right? Golf betting is a tough way to make easy money. And that's been the case, hasn't it? Because, I do a bunch each way, so it's not been too bad. But still, the difference between Keegan Bradley winning 80-1 and coming second or losing in a playoff, you get your place return, but you still go, oh, look what I could have won. And then you look at the win bet you had on him and you think, oh, come on, Keegan. He should have won. But that's just golf betting, isn't it? Sometimes it's the finest of margins.
It is. I think we had a chat about this in the pod, didn't we? So the little thing I do where I've got my columns at the end of each day. And if anyone wants to do the Excel, it would just be 1 divided by decimal odds. Total them up together, and that would be your implied win probability. So for the 3 tournaments before this week, every one of them, I was 40% plus after starting with around 20-25 on each of them. So if you're being philosophical, you have to say to yourself, I've taken good bets, I've taken value. It's just not played out the way it could have. So yeah, Keegan Bradley was a killer. Yeah, you have to be philosophical, don't you, Pete?
You do. And we had Figala, who was the first week, and then we had Tristan Lawrence, who, just because Tommy Fleetwood, oh God, it's so close, right? A lot of seconds. But that's the way it is. And like I say, we're beating. You've got to be mindful of the fact you've beaten value. You're not going to win every week, and you just got to ride that variance wave. I remember January last year was phenomenal. I think we had, was it?
Yeah.
Wacky Neiman, or maybe it was the year before. I think it was the year before. But last January was great. Yeah, Max Homer, I had a winner, and there's a few others that kicked in.
And then we had a brutal run, didn't we?
Yeah.
January was good. And then I think February through to maybe June, July was just barren. And then back end of the year, picked up and ended up with profit. But yeah, it's easy saying all this today. It wasn't very easy to say it at 4:00 on Monday morning or whatever it was. Just like, what is he doing? He's 1-4. Why is he faffing about? Just get it done.
Yeah, and we don't hedge, do we? So hedging's for gardeners.
I'm not a gardener.
No, yeah. And but we obviously, we've been working on golf, and we brought in another great service to our premium operation. We've got Golf Betting Club who joined in, and they actually did back the winner in that first week who beat Fagala. So it was, you want them to win, but also you want to win. So it was hard. I'm like, well, at least someone's going to win off that. And because they backed, it showed up their edge, right? Because they backed Chris Kirk in running, 45-1, I think. And the great thing about Golf Betting Club, obviously their pre-tournament stuff is really sharp as well, but their in-play stuff, and that's a great edge because, I love reading their stuff halfway through a tournament after each day and going, okay, well, maybe they're going to tell me that the wind was blowing in the morning and it wasn't the afternoon, or they're going to tell me about the different courses sometimes across the tournament that players have to face up to. And they do often find value, and they go, well, this guy is 200-1, but he's only 4 shots back, and it's stuff like that, which it does kick in every now and then, and it just provides extra turnover and extra interest for your golf bets, doesn't it?
It's a sport, isn't it, dominated by statistics like tee from the green, putting and all that stuff. And you read their stuff, they're talking about the weather, they're talking about interview comments after a round's finished. So they do all of that statistical stuff, but then they've also got this, I call it a softer angle, where they're thinking about things that are maybe harder to quantify. Just the way they run the service as well, Pete. So obviously going back through the record, the way they're doing tracked prices. So they'll put up a price. They'll say, you can get this price, but we're only going to put this up because this is the one that's widely available. So it's one that's accessible to everybody. Just, really like the way they run things, and very different from everything else I've seen in the golf market.
That's right. And they keep great records, and we've got them on site. So as we were talking earlier on, like these tipsters that don't keep a record, they're very selective on what they put forward. There's a complete contrast to that. And that's why we're working with them. And of course, they're profitable, they know their stuff. So it's great to have them on board. And one of the other changes we're doing at SBC, and by the time we publish this podcast, it'll be out. We're doing one major magazine a month, and we're trying to collate all the content we do. Because these days, when we started Smart Betting Club, it was very much, we do a bunch of reviews and that's it, written pieces. But now we've got podcasts, we've got videos, we're doing Twitter content, we're doing question and answers. We've got all these emails coming in that are helping people with questions. Like we talked about banking recently. We're talking about all these different things we're trying to cover, and we are going to put them, and we've got Account Agent, we're putting it all in one monthly magazine, which is going to just summarize and provide all that information from January into one magazine, and to provide, if you miss stuff, don't worry, it's all going to be within there. And I think this January's one is a completely bumper one. It's like touching 70 pages. And I just like to think when people, maybe they missed something during the month, but you won't miss anything now, because it's all going to be a historical record. Plus, we're adding stuff to it, aren't we? Like I say, maybe the emails we exchange with people about certain topics. We think, do you know what? Like with banking, I think more people need to know about this. And so it just allows us to tell everybody to share a bit of our insight, doesn't it?
Well, those questions that we often answer with our members, or sometimes not members, people often, I don't think, ask because they think something's a silly question, where I don't think I've ever received a silly question since I've been here. It's always something where I might know a lot about it, but I don't expect anybody else to. Well, I was going to say that, but but those will be really useful. And then just capturing like a zeitgeist of what's been happening in the world of gambling. So it might be something to do with politics. It might be something to do with, I don't know, affordability checks. Like you say, the banking stuff that we touched on. We'll be able to write about this tipster stuff if we get any answers on the affiliates and how all that is all working, how it's all operating in the market. So there's so much that we can put in one magazine, and it also gives us a little bit of a focus, I suppose, for our reviews. We're not trying to do 2 or 3 things at once, I suppose, Pete, as well. Just gives the readers one thing to focus on in a review.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have all the other stuff around it. So there's we've got Account Agent. Next month, we're working on some other features to put in for February. And just to wrap things up for this first part of the podcast, I wanted to talk about Bet in Asia, which is another broker, that we've been looking at recently. We talked about brokers a lot. I talked a fair bit about them in the first Betting and Clever podcast a couple of months back. So I'm not going to regurgitate all of that, but it's really interesting because what some of these firms are doing, what they have is something called Bet in Asia Black, which effectively aggregates all the best odds from all the sharp different bookmakers. So not just Pinnacle, but there's a few others. There's several others like SingBet, ISNBet. There's several others based out in Asia, and all the exchanges, aggregates them in one place, and you can basically find the best odds. So if you're trying to bet on, let's say you're trying to bet on a tennis game or a basketball game or a game which is a football game, which is going to have a sharp market, and you can find odds of 1.8 with the firm you've got, but then you use this, you can get 1.82, 1.83. It's just worth it. So that's been really good. We've started to look at them. We've got a piece going on the website to have some details about them and how you can use them. Obviously, brokers is a grey area. I definitely can't use Bet in Asia Black from the UK. I believe you can from Ireland, but it really depends where you are based. But for those of you thinking about betting, you close down by bookmakers, you're moving on to stages 3, 4, and 5 of our 5 stages of betting stuff all on the website, then these are the type of options that are available to you. So if you're interested in that, go check them out, because I've started to use them myself and I found it quite good. And just to provide another platform, another place to get your bets on. Anything to add from all of the things we talked about, Josh, before we start to move on to our chat with Matchbook?
No, betting Asia and the brokers is something that you specialise in way more than me, Pete. Like you said, there is some issues with accessing them in the UK, so it's something I've not really explored too much. But yeah, looking forward to our chat with Ronan.
Yeah, so that's it. That's great. Thank you for listening to this first part. We'll wrap things up here. And what we're going to do, we'll come back. We've got Ronan McDonagh from Matchbook, and he's going to explain all about how his service, his site at Matchbook, has started to overtake and catch up Betfair in some key markets. And I know that's going to interest quite a lot of you. So check in and stick with us for listening to that chat coming up next. We've got Ronan McDonagh from Matchbook, who is here to tell us all about the data that indicates how Matchbook are catching up and in some cases have overtaken Betfair in terms of liquidity on their exchange across a few key sports. So welcome, Ronan. First things off, can you give us the headlines of what you've achieved and the key findings from your data?
Hi guys, thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan of your work, your content and your podcast. So I'm quite delighted to be part of it. So look, we've been working hard in Matchbook over the last few years to grow some key sports. I think Matchbook's been around 12 years. I've been there just over 4, and we had a great base of US sports and soccer. And it was 2018 before we added horse racing, and it was even later again before we added greyhound. So I think post-COVID, we looked at horse racing and greyhound specifically as 2 real key exchange sports to try and grow. Our first thing was get the markets up to scratch. So that's not easy. You need partner market makers and you need to get liquidity in there. And it's kind of a chicken and egg type of thing. So that's what we did. We had market makers. We got a core market in there that we were quite happy with. And then we started looking to get customers. We got quite a few customers over organically that were on other exchanges and might have had rate increases and stuff like that. And they came across quite easy. And then we had a good kind of small retail base, but we wanted to get more volume and liquidity in there to really try and catch up with our competitors. So, another thing we did in late 2022 now, we decided to, target the on-course bookmaking market. There's Elite software run a very neat piece of kit for the on-course bookmakers where they integrated with us kindly. And then we went out onto the track to get those guys, and that's worked out really well for us. We've got over 100 in the UK and Ireland, and that's driven liquidity into the site. And then we have a big match better base, and we just kind of built it from there. And then on the end of last year, we were kind of we were really feeling very positive about it. And then at year end, we want to see how you do and all that type of stuff. So we reached out to one of the multi-platform market makers to see if we could get data across all the platforms, and we managed to get some of that just to see whether we were catching up or where we stood. And we were quite happy with how it turned out. It literally shows that we have more money in the first box in the last few minutes before the off when all the liquidity is in the market, and that's coming from on course and high volume guys. And then we added resistance to the market. I think everyone's noticed the exchanges have got lighter, for want of a better word, over the last 5 to 10 years. So not only is the price there's resistance too in the price. So, if you want to have your 250, 500, 1,000, there might be 200 or 300 quid in the box, but there's more there often because there's resistance because of who's involved in the market. So, like I said, the data, you've seen the data, guys, it's quite positive from our point of view. And, the next thing now is just getting more people to have a look at that and kind of trust us to move over.
It's fascinating because obviously Betfair have had a monopoly for such a long time, and it's never healthy when any company has a monopoly in any industry, especially when it comes to something like when you're trying to get value prices and Betfair. So you've been actively recruiting, and I presume people have been let go by Betfair or struggling with things like their source of wealth checks, or are Betfair just not actively interested in some of these customers you've managed to obtain?
Yeah, look, I can't really speak for what Betfair have done, but yeah, I suppose getting the product right first, that's the hardest part with running an exchange. It's quite difficult. But then, you have to get people to take the leap of faith to come over. But it actually was quite simple, because I think people were like, the one thing we did, we got out on the racetrack, and it's not just bookmakers, it's retail guys, guys like you. We had to make an effort to start reaching out to people and just have someone to talk to. And I think a lot of people appreciated that. Source of wealth is a big part of it. Even negotiating that is an ordeal. I've been on both sides of it, and I think people like to have someone to say, what do I need to send in? Is it like this? And they're like, no, you're just one document away. Sometimes people need a little bit of encouragement, whereas you're just getting email after email. It's easy just to throw in the towel. But look, there's lots of things, but I think a lot of people, like, they realize, one, the product is good. This is what I'm seeing in other places. I'm getting the same prices, so I'm maybe getting more down than I was. But most importantly, just someone at the end of the phone if I have a problem, or if I have feedback, to listen to me. Like, we did a lot of things last year. People asked us for forecast markets because we got them up in sight. We added extra place markets to kind of match the terms that the sportsbook offer. So if people had feedbacks, or we had areas where we were struggling in, we're open to taking that on board and doing something about it. And I think people felt that wasn't happening in other places, or things had just let be. And when you have a big something that grows like Betfair did, and like, it's an unbelievable achievement what they did, but it grew organically out of nothing, and it's massive. But it's like any kind of monopoly or a sports team that's very successful. You get to the stage where maybe apathy sets in, or you just kind of level off a bit. So that's where the opportunity arises for other people, and competition is healthy and everything.
Well, let's talk about horse racing. Josh, you've been looking at that. You bet a lot on horse racing. You had some questions.
Yeah, so we've obviously been given access to the data that you've collected. It's really interesting stuff. We're working with Liquidity 5 minutes before the race. We can see that you've got the best price on just over 70% of races, and really deep liquidity. Can we first ask how you collated this data, and tell us what it reveals about the racing markets?
Yeah, so like I said, the data we collated via a multi-platform market maker who just has access to the API. So this is there for everybody. It's available data if you can access the APIs. So we collated it like that and just put it together in these kind of simple graphs to see. But it's quite clear what it's telling us. Just that ecosystem that we built up over the last couple of years, have now created a scenario where, while the liquidity's drifting in other places, we've kind of just leapt forward, because I think a lot of it, what happens as well, obviously, if you pull liquidity from another venue and it drops, it builds it. So it's kind of, there's two things happening at once there. So I think that's been a big part of it. Yeah, and it's not even just 5 minutes. The further out you go, look, we've been building it up. Earlier, markets in horse racing everywhere are weak, but every that bit closer, we've been trying to match our competitors and get there. And like I said, a lot of that has been who we brought into the ecosystem as well, just really consistent volume with high turnover of customers, which is the key for horse racing.
I've been looking at these markets myself since we've obviously had the data shared with us. Noticed some patterns that there seems to be more liquidity elsewhere the further away from you get from the race. So obviously Matchbook are getting really good in that build up to races. How does this correspond to the odds that people take? Is greater volume good for prices, lower overrounds?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, you get all that mix of people I've mentioned, like, is it high volume customers, there's professional putters in there, there's bookmakers, there's best market makers in the business, there's match bettors and arbors, and they'll all drive the price to 100%. And that's what we want. They want to get their piece of the pie. And it just, that last 30 minutes, the last 20, last 10, that's when all the action happens. That's where 95%, I think people get too caught up in early prices. The prices, that just doesn't really exist in any context anymore. Not 99% of it, of volume is done in the last 20, 30 minutes. And that's all that really matters as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we've got a favourite saying. It's from Barney Curley, can't get on a banana to win two, which is
correct. Yeah.
Always a good way of measuring it. Looking at the graphs and tables that we've got, how do you weigh up the size of the markets? Obviously, Betfair, there's up into win and place parts, whereas yours is a little bit different. It has the total amount traded. Can you just explain the differences maybe there? So when people look at these tables, they'll understand what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, the volume number, I think people focus on that a lot. But I'd like to think the key numbers are the liquidity and the prices, and the volume will follow. So I suppose the key point that I often get asked this question, and I think a lot of people don't even realise it, but the volume figures collected are collated different on Betfair than all the other exchanges. So sport like horse racing, we calculated on stake plus liability. So €10, 10-1 is 110. That's 20 on Betfair. But on the flip side, all them odds-on markets like cricket, tennis, Betfair, if it's 1.3, that's 130 quid match with us in the match volume figure, and it's 200 quid on Betfair. So that's why, look, the cricket's inflated for other reasons too, obviously, but the numbers on those sports, there's no right way. I've talked to a lot of smarter people than me about what's a good volume figure. I don't think anyone thinks it's a really good one, but these figures are comparable. Absolutely. Like we didn't doctor the figures we use for comparison, but the key figure I think people need to appreciate is the number that you can get on.
Yeah.
So if you can back your horse to win $1,000 or $5,000, that's important. And then look, it's up to everybody else to come and join us and get that match volume figure up. And I'm hopefully confident that will take care of itself.
Yeah, the liquidity is definitely impressive. I mean, I've noticed it looking across compared to when I first looked at Matchbook. It's definitely incomparable, really. So
what you want is more customers to take this liquidity in Matchbook. So it's almost like an appeal to people to say, come check out Matchbook. You might have looked at us a few years ago, but things have changed. The volume is there. Give us a try. And yeah, we'll talk later. We've got a special offer as well, but so to encourage people with a low commission. But that's the call to action, isn't it? Come and use Matchbook.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the on-course bookmakers and even like the pro punters that we deal with, like, they're the sharpest minds in the business. You know what I mean? The guys who've been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years. Like I've noticed, this is my 20th year in the exchange business, which is quite grim probably. But I've noticed, you get a lot of people that have 3 and 5 year successful cycles, but the guys around 15 or 20 years, if they're all on Matchbook and they're all having a good time and they're not ringing me complaining, then you shouldn't really be concerned either. Like they're all getting their bets matched. So I think, and I think that gives us comfort, and that's where we see the growth, because it's like with the bookmakers, it took a few early adapters and 2 or 3 guys were, brave enough to take the leap of faith, and then word spread, and then it actually it got quite easy for us because, guys were ringing us to see if they could get in the door. Thankfully, they're hanging around, and like I said, they're not ringing me to complain about this. And if they do ring me about something, we'll go and try and fix it. But yeah, that's absolutely what I'd say. I think a lot of people are just caught up that there's only one exchange, and that I think another thing that people get confused slightly as well is that they think one exchange is driving the prices everywhere else, which is not really true, and it can't be true. If there's a big chunk of bookmakers on the course driving volume into Matchbook, and there's big market makers and there's pro punters, like the market is going to move first with us on occasion than Betfair. So I think people get too caught up that the other exchanges are murdering one exchange. That's not necessarily the case, and it's certainly not the case in Matchbook anymore.
Yeah. I don't want to keep saying their name. It's like Voldemort in Harry Potter or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
But one thing that we use a lot to measure whether tipsters are good, for example, is the Betfair starting price. And we also know that a lot of system bettors, they like to use that as a metric, or they like to bet to that. Is that something that you've ever considered, having that as like a Matchbook starting price or an on-the-off price?
Absolutely. And it's funny, I don't know what's happened since Christmas, but I've been bowled over for people asking me that. Yeah. Whereas last year, only a handful of people mentioned it. But yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I was aware when Betfair were doing it, a lot of work went into that. It's not as simple as pulling the last price off the exchange. You have to be aware of trader volume and, potential manipulation and all those type of things. But yeah, no, that's definitely something we're looking at. And, we're very conscious that, like, this is probably a different conversation, but the industry SPs at the moment are quite scandalous.
It's a disgrace, yeah.
It is a disgrace. And, I've been thinking about this a little bit recently when people ask about the SP. You've got the bookmakers driving volume into the exchanges. You've got the winning punters and, big syndicates on the exchanges. And yeah, we've come to a scenario where the SP is being driven by retail money and where people can't win. So it just can't be right. It just can't be a right number. So, that definitely, when we do bring the SP in, we'll be very much shouting about it being, the figure that people want to pay attention to.
That'd be great, yeah. I remember hearing a story from, I think it was in Simon Knott's podcast with Johnny Deneen, and Ladbrokes used to try and manipulate the starting prices on the courses at Ireland.
Yeah.
By betting with him, and he refused to drop the price. He just kept the price, and they kept on piling in. So yeah, it'd be great to have another barometer to prove that what they're doing is just scandalous at the moment. That'd be brilliant.
As funny as annoying as that was probably for Johnny, at least they spent money to do it back then. Now they're doing it with no cost and for a massive benefit. It just add margin to the product.
Yeah.
Which is, it's really like that's the sort of thing that should be regulated and people should be getting frustrated about.
Yeah, really good stuff there.
It's such an old school way of betting, isn't it? And the way it works is so no one really knows. So yeah, it'd be great to, but I appreciate, obviously it's a complex model to try and build something like that, but it's good to know that it's a lot of people are asking you, and hopefully that's encouraging the bods behind at Matchbook to try and put something together to compete with that. So,
and absolutely, this is going to help my business case as well for it.
just cut that bit and share it internally. Just move to football or soccer, as you put it in your PDF. Tell me about your football markets and how they compare, because there's growth there as well, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've always been strong in soccer, especially the core markets. And again, it's the nature of who's in there. We have, big market makers, arbitrage players, and, big customers as well. But look, we have a long way to go in soccer. That's definitely an opportunity. I think the difference between soccer and horse racing and greyhounds is soccer. I'm saying it now is that it's a global market, and I think people can get on soccer everywhere. So it's a bit trickier to grow, and there's a lot of competition. But I suppose the one thing about our football markets in the last couple of years as well, we've added more derivative markets. So we have markets in there, exchange markets that aren't on the other exchanges, like match odds and over 3.5 goals, match odds and over 4.5 goals. I think football betting's really kind of gone. People have moved away from backing even money shots to anything with a price. Our biggest growth market in soccer by absolute distance in the last 18 months is Correct Score. And again, that's another market that's just really, really tight, because we've a dozen plus market makers in soccer. So, from a product point of view, we're very happy with soccer, but it's just getting more volume and customers over there. And look, we're going to tag on bet builders onto the site shortly, because we know that, people who do bet football nowadays, want access to them as well. So, but have your bet builder bet, but then look at the core markets, because that really is where there's great value.
I was looking at the Premier League last week, and I was looking at the Burnley-Luton game, and it looked like there was slightly more money traded on Betfair. I don't know how calculations compare, but in terms of just getting the odds and the prices, they were identical, right? You couldn't go to Matchbook and get a worse price than Betfair or a better price than the alternative. So if you do all your betting through Matchbook, be it horse racing, football, there's enough money there to fill your boots on all the main markets.
Yeah, that's been a part of the the process. Look, we're trying to knock off sport one by one, but ideally you want to be a one-stop shop where you're like, if you're betting on horse racing every day and you want to bet the Champions League, I don't need to go somewhere else. Like, you should be able to comfortably bet all your major sports with Matchbook, and that's where we want to get to.
Just to mention on that, actually, with football, my friends and I share some bets each week, so we kind of team up together. You can bet multiples on Matchbook, can't you, with football?
Yeah, absolutely. You can bet all sports pretty much on multiples. So multiples are it's a separate product to the exchange, but the beauty of our multiple product is it's driven by exchange prices. So, they're going to be the best value you can get, especially on the soccer markets. And it's been really good for us. I think we're the only exchange multiples out there now, but they're driven off the exchange prices. Obviously they're not the first box necessarily, but they're super, and you can get some good volume down. But yeah, it's actually been a great product for us, because people like to do multiples alongside their single action as well.
Just to move on to another sport, Ronan. So you mentioned that you were specialised from the outset of Matchbook on American sports. We had a look at NFL. Your liquidity was excellent compared to the other two exchanges that we're comparing to. Can you tell us about your markets there? Do you have big market makers on board?
Yeah. Like when Matchbook started originally, it kind of concentrated on the four major US sports, and that's never gone away for us. It's just there's a real niche following for those sports in the UK, and they're all televised nowadays. But yeah, they're really, really strong markets. NFL, NBA is a massive sport for us for betting, and the markets are really, really strong there. You can do the multiples as well, and you can get big size down on all them US sports on Matchbook. So yeah, look, we love them sports. We have we do a lot of content around them, and we've had really strong base of customer there over the year. And really, if you do bet in those sports, it's the only place to be.
So you got NFL, we've talked about football, you got greyhounds, we were looking at golf. Let's tell about the golf stuff, because that's something we bet on a lot. It seems like liquidity is growing there, but doesn't quite have the depth quite yet in terms of the, how much you want to get on. But then it's difficult with golf because you've got 140 players in a traditional field, maybe even more sometimes. Tell us about what you're doing with sports like golf and any other sports and markets, and how you're trying to build them up.
Yeah, so golf is one of my favourite sports for watching and betting on. And so I was very aware that we were quite weak in golf for the last several years, but we've really turned that around in the last 3 to 6 months. And, I think obviously during the quiet time of the season, but we'll hopefully see the growth now this year. But we brought in a couple of new market makers, some really strong ones. And we've also brought in additional markets that aren't elsewhere again, which I think is really a strong selling point because, you have a look around and you'll see stuff that isn't on the other exchanges. And, it backs up my story that we're just not, it's not a case of copying prices. We're over-under round totals, which are really popular markets. I was quite surprised how popular they are, but I think they're not available in other places. And obviously on an exchange, they're bred a lot tighter. They're really bet real poorly on sports books markets like that. And then top 5, top 10, we've been working to get those a bit stronger. And just on the prices, I've even seen a difference since the start of this year. We had a customer back Denny McCarthy last week to win 300 grand without
no way. Denny McCarthy.
Denny McCarthy. So that will just tell you the resistance that's in the markets in 2024. So golf's going to be a massive sport for us, and I know a lot of people have excess charges in golf in other places, but we were happy for them to come and have a go with us and see what they like. But definitely the prices are there, the market's there. It's going to be there for every Monday night stroke Tuesday, and then on Wednesday you'll be able to get proper size down in golf if you're that way inclined.
I noticed when I was looking at the markets that the PGA ones, this is at the back end of last year, a little bit this year as well, the PGA market seemed to be a little bit more liquid, less scrappy prices. Yeah. Is that in terms of getting market makers on board? Do you have to negotiate for individual tours?
Yeah, it's a case of the skill set, and I suppose the PGA Tour just has more depth. I think it's easier for them to model and stuff like that. The European Tour's got very weak, but it's demand as well. Where do you put your priorities? I think people work harder on the PGA Tour than the European Tour. I don't want to speak for market makers, but I think it's, betting volume as well. But I'd like to think that both tours and Live, when that comes back, will accommodate everybody at a good price for volume as well. So yeah, look, I'm not overly concerned about it. I think what's there in the European Tour will match the demand for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But the PGA Tour definitely will be very strong. And then when we get to the majors, you'll be able to back golfers to win $500,000 or $1 million on the site come the Masters. So.
Yeah, and Denny McCarthy.
And Denny McCarthy.
To win the Masters, you heard it here first.
We've been back in bridesmaids rather than brides this year so far, haven't we, Pete? We've had lots of seconds. Well, 3 seconds in a row.
Exactly. Lots of seconds, yeah.
I've been following you guys, so yeah, your seconds are my seconds.
Yeah. I'm sorry. At least it didn't back McCarthy. All joking aside, though, I think the reason that people are concerned, with the current setup and the current space across the UK and Irish market is in terms of source of wealth, the checks and all this kind of stuff. And that's the biggest barrier, and obviously the reason that people are, maybe they're leaving companies like Betfair, they're unable to deposit enough, or they're just so many restrictions in place for them to send, all these documents that they might need to do to prove their income, to prove they can afford it. I know Matchbook obviously have to abide by all the rules and regulations. Are you being, proactive in terms of helping people and trying to encourage people to come to you to say, look, let's see if we can help you, and make sure we do it obviously responsibly and do it within the realms of the restrictions and the proposals that we now have to abide by. But is that something you're actually doing to say, people, if you're concerned, come to us, you'll speak to a real person, and we'll try our best to make sure that you can deposit within the means of what you're able to do so?
Yeah, look, this is a real difficult climate we've ended up in the last few years. And, it's quite difficult for the exchanges because, I think people don't realise it's a zero-sum game. You do need to have certain losing volume, but not always losing volume equals losers. You have arbors and all that type of stuff. So it can be quite difficult to manage compliance. But look, like you said, we act to the gold standard of compliance. Our compliance team are really good. And look, everybody has to abide by the guidelines. But the thing I'd like to think that we do different is that we will talk to people and we will handhold you within reason through it. And I think that's what people appreciate, because a lot of the time, and look, we're a smaller company right now, so it's a little bit easier to do, but why not? That's an advantage for us. But I think, nobody wants an email with a big long list of stuff that you wouldn't, bar getting a mortgage for your house, you wouldn't be that enthused to send it to anyone. But when someone rings you, or you have the availability to ring somebody and say, look, do you need this, that, and whatever, look, it's not too bad. I just need this one document, or I might need page 4 of your bank statement, and you're like, oh, I can give you page 4. Whereas, when it's back in email form, you just lose people. People don't engage in email, and no, I don't, on things like that. So I think that's been a key point for us. And like I said, our compliance team are really good. Like, we have weekly meetings on a Tuesday where we review cases from the week before or what's coming up, and it gives you an opportunity to say, look, this one's a little bit different, or sometimes context is the documents might need context, and when you're going back and forward, an email doesn't necessarily give you that. And then I suppose the other thing that people appreciate as well, and I had just 2 cases I did this week where guys who are just pro gamblers, and they might have the problem. See, it's a kind of a domino effect. They've had to do stuff in other people's names because they can't get on, right? So that's been created by the industry and regulations. But then there's no guidelines to ever pass those guys on, because we have to have AML concerns and stuff like that. But when these guys appear, at least, I can ring them up or text them and say, look, there's nothing I can do for you here. It is. And people prefer that than being, just told denied. Whereas, there's no point wasting people's time. And I want to get every customer on the site, but the regulations are there for a reason too, to protect people. But I think, communication is everything, and we go out of our way to do that, like I said, within reason. And there might be people listening to this who had issues in the past and might want to have another go, like happy enough to engage with anyone on that. But the guidelines are tough and we have to abide by them. But definitely, I'd like to think people have a better opportunity by communicating with us than just via emails.
Yeah, I think that's what people want, right? That's what people want. They just want to be told and say, speak to somebody perhaps can appreciate that if they're in a unique situation, and just be like, I'm sorry, my hands are tied, or I can do this for you, but I can't do everything. And just to get a straight answer. And I think they appreciate you're not the reason why, these firms aren't the reason why, but it becomes frustrating when you just can't get a straight answer sometimes, or they ask for 20 years of documents from bookmakers who are no longer in business.
Yeah, and look, there's guys there where, they can go away and say, well, look, I'm never going to qualify. Well, what will I have to do different? And they can come back maybe in 12 months' time and their circumstances have changed and now they can pass it and they might come back to us first. That's the way I'd like to look at it. But it's very tricky, and I feel sorry for like genuine people that have been in the game for 30, 40 years who are getting caught up in this.
Yeah, I mean, we're not in the business of being too sympathetic towards bookmakers and exchanges, well, bookmakers especially, but with all these regulations, I mean, we've been watching the political debate go on. I can imagine it's an absolute nightmare. You say, yeah. Can we ask about winning punters? Let's say someone comes on board, they're a big winner. How does Matchbook deal with them? And is there something similar to premium charge, or is it a bit different?
Yeah, look, it's very different. Everybody gets a chance to come in the door, with us. Like, you come in, sign up, you're on 2%. A lot of people, you make contact with them or you know who they are in advance. But like, we're very fair. We don't have premium charge, whereas if you hit X, you're now on this. Don't believe in that. I don't think it works. I just don't like it. But what we do is, again, communication is key. Like, I'll give you a good example. I got a guy that was recommended to us last year, and he called me up and he said, look, love to have a bet on greyhounds. He goes, I'm going to win over the year. He goes, I don't want you to rev share or premium charge me or anything like that. And I said, look, I can't make any guarantees. Look, we have rate levers we can pull, because you have to generate revenue. You have to protect the ecosystem. Like, they exist for a reason, but we have to be fair. And like I said, that guy said, will you play on 5% net win? He says, absolutely. And he said, and I said, look, if anything changes, I'll call you up. Now, he's played away in the site. Now, he's won his few quid over the year, and we've got enough revenue from him that everyone's happy. And that's the way we deal with it. But like, if he's good at greyhounds, he can still bet in the Premier League at 2%. Yeah. And horse racing. And so I think, so everything is bespoke from our point of view. And like I said, we'll drop you an email or call you up. And sometimes it's, we can bargain with a guy and he'll say, look, I'll do this, or I'll do something different, or I'll give you more volume. Like, some guys dip in and out, but he's like, oh, well, I was actually doing stuff in other places. So I'm like, well, bring everything over to us and then your rate makes sense. So it's all about communicating with people, and we have to get a fair rate to make the ecosystem work. You just have to. And I think people get caught up in premium charge and they don't want winners and stuff like that. I don't believe in that, but like, there's different types of winners. There's good exchange customers and bad exchange customers. Like, if you're a taker at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, you're the same as a taker and everything else. Like, there's no long-term future in that. So, but the guys who I said, as I referenced, the guys who are in the game for 20 years, they evolve. They play when the liquidity is in the market. They turn over lots of money, and 2% is absolutely fine for a lot of these guys, and they can earn on our site. So like, it's just about fairness, and it's about communication, and then just finding the right rate.
Yeah, sounds fair enough.
Speaking of rates, then I believe we've got a special commission, 0% commission for listeners, readers, anyone coming across this podcast or the accompanying article. Tell us about that and what the rate is and how long for.
Yeah, look, we're going to give your customers, I think your customers should be our customers. They definitely think alike, I would like to imagine, but we're going to give them 0% for 150 days, right? So that's longer than anybody else, but that'll get you, most of the golf majors will get you into the Euros, and have a look around the site. Please let me know if you have any feedback, good, positive. Most of the feedback I get nowadays, thankfully, is, you could add a little button here or click here and stuff like that. And I love feedback like that. But if you have any other feedback, fire it my way. And like I said, we'll do our best to help people out. But, 150 days and 0%, have a look around and please stay after that.
Yeah, well, nothing to lose really. And like I say, we've looked at quite a few markets, haven't we, Josh? And you can often get, even in golf markets, you're getting the same price. Well, I'm going to pay 0% commission. For me, I'm looking forward to using that, and I'm just going to use Matchbook for that period of time at the very least. And then it's a really good offer. So we'll slide the details of that offer into all the material surrounding this podcast and our article. And I guess, Ronan, people can contact you. Can I slide in your details, or do you want to shout them out now if people have questions or other concerns about, well, if I sign up for Matchbook, can I do this and this? How can they get in touch?
Yeah, so I've been living in the shadows for a long time, but if people want to get in touch on Twitter or my email, I'll share that with you guys afterwards. And absolutely, just get in contact with me, like good, bad, or indifferent. And look, if you had a bad experience in the past, I can have a look again. If you haven't ever looked at this and you want to find what's possible, I'm happy to chat to you. But look, definitely get in touch. And then even if you are on the site and there's something you don't like, something you love, let me know as well, because that all our feedback is used by us and we do act on it.
That's great.
Should
we discuss our rebate for SBC podcast hosts now, or should we do that after?
There we go. Well, that's after. That's when we wrap up, Josh. Come on. Ronan, thanks so much, mate. It's great to come out and have a frank conversation. That's all we ever want. Sometimes just to what's the reality, and you laid things bare today and explained the pros and cons and why you're doing things and how you've managed to attract all these customers and what you're looking to do. So I really appreciate your candor coming on today, and thanks ever so much, Ronan, and look forward to using Matchbook throughout 2024.
Thanks, guys. That was more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be.
Cheers, Ronan.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.